World Geography, Europe, Geographic Foundations. Here are the learning objectives. 1. What reasons might explain why there are different interpretations of the political boundaries of Europe? 2. Identify the main physical features of the European continent and their impact on cultural identity. 3. Distinguish between the different climate subregions of Europe and identify the factors underlying the differences. 4. What impact did the Industrial Revolution of the late 1700s have on the economic development of modern Europe? 5. Describe the population characteristics. 6. What conclusions can be drawn from how Europeans deal with pollution and rising seas? Political features. Here are some maps of the political features of Europe. You'll notice that each map is slightly different, includes different parts of what is considered to be Europe. Europe can be kind of what we have referred to earlier as a perceptual region. Being European sometimes depends upon your perception. This first map includes parts of Russia, west of the Ural Mountains, as part of Europe. That's kind of traditional. That is considered part of Europe. But it also includes places like Turkey and Kazakhstan, and those are not traditionally considered to be part of Europe. Here's the more traditional map of Europe that you might find in a textbook, and it excludes Russia. It excludes countries like Ukraine and Belarus and Lithuania. Focuses on the core countries in Europe. And then here's another way of looking at Europe in relationship to the surrounding area. Physical features. Peninsulas. Europe is a large peninsula stretching west of Asia. Within Europe, there are several smaller peninsulas. It's sometimes called the Peninsula of Peninsulas. Look closely at this physical map of Europe and see if you can identify some of these peninsulas. Remember, a peninsula is a body of land surrounded by water on three sides, just like Florida. Northern peninsulas. In northern Europe, you have the Scandinavian peninsula. It's occupied by Norway, Sweden, and most of northern Finland. In this region, glaciers scoured away the topsoil, and it left behind a thin, rocky soil that's difficult to farm. Furthermore, in Norway, the glaciers carved out fjords, and these are steep U-shaped valleys that connect to the sea and are filled with seawater. Also in northern Europe is the Jutland Peninsula, and it's just across the North Sea from Scandinavia, kind of south of Norway and Sweden. This peninsula forms the largest part of Denmark and a small part of Germany. Here you can see the Scandinavian peninsula. You can see it occupied by Norway, Sweden, and then part of northern Finland. And if we move just a little bit further south, you see the Jutland Peninsula, and then it kind of extends on into the northern European plain, which we'll speak about later. Southern peninsulas. There are more peninsulas in the south of Europe. Three major ones. The first one the Iberian Peninsula. It's home to the countries of Spain, Portugal, and the tiny mountain nation of Andorra. The Pyrenees Mountains block this peninsula from the rest of Europe. Second is the Italian Peninsula. It's shaped like a boot and extends into the Mediterranean Sea. And third is the Balkan Peninsula. This peninsula is mountainous, and it contains a variety of ethnic and religious groups that have often been in conflict throughout the centuries. Look closely at this physical map. See if you can identify the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, the Italian Peninsula, the boot, and the Balkan Peninsula, which is a little bit harder, more difficult to identify. Mountains and uplands. The mountains and uplands, which are just the hills of Europe, separate groups of people, and they create distinct cultural regions. This separation of people by the mountains and the uplands, this is the reason there are so many different languages and cultures and ethnic groups within Europe, because they were traditionally for hundreds, thousands of years separated by these mountain ranges. These mountains made it difficult for people, goods, and ideas to move freely and easily from one place to another. And these different landforms, as we'll see later, also affected climate. Mountain chains. The Alps arc across France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and on into the northern Balkan Peninsula. They completely cut Italy off from the rest of Europe. Another mountain range is the Pyrenees, and they restrict movement from France to Spain and Portugal. Nestled in the Pyrenees is the tiny nation of Andorra, which we spoke about earlier. Then running like a spine down Italy are the Apennines, and they divide the Italian peninsula. Finally are the Balkan Mountains, and the Balkans isolate the Balkan Peninsula from the rest of Europe. See if you can identify on this map the Pyrenees, the Alps, the Apennines, and the Balkan Mountains. Uplands. Uplands are hills or very low mountains that may contain mesas and plateaus. Remember, a plateau is a mountain with a flat top, and so is a mesa really too. European uplands include the Scottish Highlands. These are located in the northern part of the British Isles. Other uplands are the Central Plateau of Spain, the Meseta Central, and then the third one is the Massif Central in France. On this map, identify the highlands in the northern part of the British Isles. You can also see the Massif Central in France and the Meseta in central Spain. Fertile plains. The northern European plain, this is the equivalent to the American Great Plains, and it's a fertile agricultural region stretching in a huge curve across parts of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, and on into Poland. The plain's flatness has allowed armies to use it as an open invasion route into Europe. That's its drawback. Here you can see this northern European plain as it stretches all the way from Denmark, and then you can see it across parts of Germany and then on into Poland. Rivers. The Danube and the Rhine, those are two major European rivers, and they were used for the transportation of people and goods throughout the centuries. before there were highways and railroads. The rivers have also aided in the movement of ideas. This is a good example of the diffusion of culture. Seas. The North Sea is surrounded by the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway. It's a major source of petroleum and natural gas. Further south, the Mediterranean Sea connects Africa, Southwest Asia, and Europe. It's an essential trade route that connects the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean via the Suez Canal. There's a choke point at the Strait of Gibraltar, which is the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. A choke point's a narrow area where traffic or other movement can become blocked. On this map, you can see the Mediterranean Sea. In the north is Europe. South of there is Africa, northern Africa. And it doesn't really show it on this map, but if you were to go to the right or to the east, would be Southwest Asia. If you look closely on the map all the way to the west, you can see the Strait of Gibraltar, where Spain meets Africa. Climate. Westerly winds, currents. A marine west coast climate exists in northern Spain, across most of France and Germany to western Poland. It's also found in the British Isles and in some coastal areas of Scandinavia. A marine west coast climate it's a mild climate, and in this case it's a mild climate at a very high northern latitude, which is a little odd, and I will explain it in a moment. It turns out that the North Atlantic Drift, which is a continuation of the Gulf Stream, it's responsible for this more mild climate at a high northern latitude. The North Atlantic Drift is a current of warm water from the southern latitudes that flows near Europe's west coast. At this point, prevailing westerlies blow west to east over these waters, and they carry the warmth and moisture from the current very far inland. Harsher inland conditions. If you live too far from the Atlantic Ocean, you don't benefit from the moderating influence of the westerlies. Therefore, countries like Sweden, Finland, Romania, and eastern parts of Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary, they don't have a marine west coast climate, too far away from the ocean. What they have is a humid continental climate, just like the Great Plains of the United States. So they have cold, snowy winters and warm to hot summers. The adequate rainfall of this climate leads to an abundant agricultural harvest. Sunny Mediterranean. Surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, from southern Spain and France through Italy to Greece, is a Mediterranean climate. The summers are hot with sunny skies, and winters are moderate and wet. Mountain ranges block the cold north winds from northern Europe from reaching the Iberian, Italian, and Balkan peninsulas. However, the Mediterranean coast of France, it's not protected by high mountain ranges. So sometimes these winter winds come in, and they're called the Mistral, and they make the region very cold. A Mistral is a cold, dry wind from the north. On the other hand, you have the Sirocco, which is a hot, steady wind that blows from North Africa, and sometimes it brings moisture over the Mediterranean Sea into southern Europe. Sometimes it brings the dust off the Sahara Desert into southern Europe. Here's a climate map of Europe. You should look at it carefully. The light green areas are the marine west coast regions, so you can see that they're close to the ocean, the warm waters of the North Atlantic Drift. And then as you move further inland, move further to the east, you're going to see the humid continental zones, which are the kind of aqua colors. And then if you move down towards the Mediterranean, you're going to see below the highland area of the Alps. Around the Mediterranean, you're going to see the Mediterranean climate zone. So you have several different climates here that we have in the United States. You have marine west coast, like you find in Washington State. You have Mediterranean, like in Los Angeles. And you have humid continental, like on the Great Plains of the United States. Economic and political characteristics. Economic expansion. The Industrial Revolution of the late 1700s, it laid the foundation of Europe's current economic growth and its global influence. Increased productivity and lower costs achieved through the use of machines slowly raised European living standards. Now, European markets at home and abroad, they expanded, and European countries have become leading industrial centers. Role of government. The political and economic system in most European countries is democratic socialism, or a mixed economy. European governments, they may operate airlines, railroads, electric companies, telephone companies, and other public services like the healthcare sector. Population. Population characteristics. About 742 million people live in Europe. They're concentrated in towns and cities. The largest religion is Christianity. 76% consider themselves Christian. That could be Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant. Islam is concentrated in the southeastern countries of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, and Kosovo. Many Europeans consider themselves secular. Secular means having no religious belief. Human-environment interaction. Acid rain. Acid rain harms the forests and lakes of Europe and is caused by air pollution. Turns out that the chemicals from the burning of lignite coal, which is plentiful in Europe, and the pollution and chemicals from car exhausts, they react with water to form corrosive acids that eat away at things slowly until they are destroyed. To reduce this pollution, Europeans have done a couple of things. First, they've installed smokestack scrubbers at coal power plants to remove sulfur dioxide from the gases that leave the plant. Another thing they've done is require the installation of catalytic converters on automobiles to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions from the exhaust pipes. Land from the sea. The Dutch in the Netherlands, they've reclaimed land from the sea by diking and draining an area of land. They call this a polder. When you've drained the land, it's a polder. The Dutch also have erected seaworks over the centuries to control the sea's destructive impact on their country. Seaworks can include things like dikes or levees to hold back the sea, and then also high earthen platforms or kind of towers called turpen. You can go up into these turpen because they provide places that you can retreat to for safety during floods. Polder. Here's an example of how they create a polder. They build an embankment out in the sea, and then they slowly drain the water from behind that embankment. They let the rains come and wash out this newly exposed land, wash out the salt from this land. And then eventually, after some time, you can go ahead and plant crops. Of course, the sea is still kind of above you because your farm is at below sea level. And this is how they've reclaimed a lot of land in the Netherlands. Well, they've done this in several places around the world. The end. Thank you for your time.